Stephen, thanks so much for being with us today. I'd love to ask you, when you're a student worker in Aberdeen, what's the most important thing that you learned during your time doing that role?
So, I've got maybe two or three couplets of things that I think are important to hold in tension. One is listening and empowering. There's a sense of, a lot of these things could be summed up in discipleship, but listening, caring well for students, but also not just caring and feeding them, but releasing and equipping them to reach their peers, to go forward and pioneer in mission. So both listening and empowering, preaching and speaking and discipling them in identity issues and purpose. So there's a tendency to focus on one or other, and I found it just really needed to do both identity and purpose stuff. I think you can turn in on yourself a wee bit much if you just feed identity, and you can also blow up if you just preach purpose and disciple them in purpose. So identity and purpose, and I think the final one is something along the lines of encouragement and correction. Again, depending on your personality, you might want to lean towards one of those. I'm not sure which, depending on which day I would go, but I think students need both the sort of encouragement, the getting alongside, but also probably the discipleship culture that says it's alright to speak words of correction. So encouragement and correction would be my third one. I think that's all about discipleship, a quality thing rather than anything else.
Fantastic. And you've now moved on to become a senior pastor in Glasgow.
I have. Lead pastor, actually.
Lead pastor.
Yeah.
Lead pastor in
Only
Adelaide
pastor.
Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you are in that position, and
I'm the main guy.
You're the main guy,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of steering the ship, and you're setting the vision for the whole church. How do you now see students in terms of the entire church? What's their role? What's their place within the church?
I don't really know, but I'm going to throw another couplet at you that kind of is really important in my mind for seeing students in our church ministry and in the life of our church, and it's integration or being an integrated ministry and also a specific ministry. By that I mean it's important to have a cast of vision for a church that sees students as a part of it, part of the family, not a church within a church. I think there's a hunger for students, young adults, to be a part of something that is just not people like themselves, but it's a hunger for something bigger than that, and that goes across generations, across social barriers. So integration has to be a major part of that. But I don't think we can abdicate responsibility for the specific need of going through your student years, which has specific challenges, specific problems, that you're at a stage of your life where you can most easily shape young people's views on money, sexuality, relationships, work, how they participate in church, so many different things. And so I think there's a need to deal with student issues specifically, and that can look different in different contexts, but I think as lead pastor I'm thinking through what does it mean to integrate, but what does it also mean to deal with the specific needs, and I think you can come to many different answers, but you need to ask those questions.
Fantastic. And how about their spiritual walk, their spiritual lives? What's the best way that students can really deepen their walk with Christ during those 3-4 years that they're in that really intense environment at university?
I guess I want to say they should throw themselves into a church that will do discipleship that focuses on 3 directions, the sort of in, up and out. If you go to a church that has discipleship culture that is just pulling you into 1 or 2 of those without a balance in all 3, I think put yourself into a local congregation which is pulling you and stretching you all 3, perhaps all the more in and out, because we tend to focus on in and up really well. So I would just say put yourself into a community who are committed to that.
And what do you mean by the in, out and up?
In stuff is you're like caring for one another, doing community, doing relationships well. Up, in my view, is worship, your growth in your word, spirit and study, and and your out is just your flow out, you're participating in the mission of God in your locality, in your context, and making time for that, because it's probably one of the biggest barriers. So in, up and out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.